Irma's winds are long gone, and the floodwaters she left behind have receded. But the survivors, like Anderson Zumbana in Naples,
when I went home, I just saw like everything was just ruined,
are still picking up the pieces.
I had nowhere to go. You know, I don't have that much family down here in Florida. So my only option was, you know, apply for FEMA.
He entered his name, address, and social security number on the FEMA website when a pop-up told him he already applied.
I called the 1-800 number, and they told me, sir, you already applied for this. I was like, ma'am, no, I haven't. It's like, yes, sir, you have. You live in Miami Gardens, and you already applied for this.
And Anderson Zumbana is not alone.
He says, we got a little problem. I said, what's that? He says, somebody's already applied.
At least 3 people have filed reports with the Collier County Sheriff's Office and 2 people with the Lee County Sheriff's Office claiming someone applied for FEMA using their personal information.
So he just basically says, looks like we got a fraud. And I said, it sounds like it.
So the NBC2 investigators brought these issues to FEMA's attention.
Right now, we're trying to get a number. I'm trying to get a number for you. I don't know if I'll have it by the time, you know, you're ready to put this story to air. But we are trying to find out, you know, how big the problem is in Florida.
FEMA spokesperson Tim Hall was not able to tell me how many people have filed these types of complaints with FEMA, but he said the agency does take these claims very seriously.
If you're caught defrauding the government and applying for federal assistance and taking money away from a survivor who needs it, you can go to prison for 10 years. You can face a $250,000 fine.
As far as the fraud victims, Hall says FEMA will work with them to make sure they get the money they deserve.
We're still going to hear you out, work with you, and we're going to get you the federal assistance you need.
Still, they're getting impatient.
The problem I'm having now is getting back through to them to find out what's going on.
As the days are passing,
do you think that FEMA is taking too long?
I'm still waiting, and it's been a month.
And their bills are growing.
They told me they will cancel her benefits and I could reapply. I tried to reapply, denied me, and I tried calling them again, emailing them again, no answer.
It's getting worse by the day. On Tuesday, the NBC2 investigators exposed dozens of Southwest Florida residents were victims of FEMA fraud after Hurricane Irma. Tonight, we've learned the number is in the hundreds.
So in our original story, identity theft victims found out about it when they applied for FEMA assistance. But these new victims never sought FEMA's help. NBC2 investigator Rachel Polansky is live in our newsroom with her new findings.
Just minutes after my report aired on Tuesday, the emails started pouring in. And I've confirmed that since Hurricane Irma ripped through Florida, there have been almost 900 complaints related to fraud statewide.
Viewers sent me letter after letter.
It's strange.
All coming from the U.S. Small Business Administration.
That told me, no, there's something very wrong here.
Telling them they recently registered with FEMA for assistance. But here's the strange thing. They never applied.
After I saw your news report, we really got worried because it's identity theft. It's such a scary, scary thing.
That means someone else applied using their personal information.
I've never had this problem before. I've never had an issue with my identity or credit card issues or anything. So yeah, I was a little concerned about this.
So if these letters are legitimate, do you believe that all of these people have had their identity stolen?
Yes, if it is legitimate, then that means someone has applied for FEMA benefits using your identity. What information do they need to do that? Name, address, date of birth, and social security number. So you can pretty much assume your identity has been compromised and you should take appropriate steps.
Okay, before you freak out, here's what you need to do.
Notify the SBA. You also want to notify the FEMA fraud hotline and let them know that this application was not yours and that it was identity theft.
Then it's time to get copies of your credit reports from each of the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And then you should think about freezing your credit.
With a credit freeze, you're telling the credit bureaus that they are not allowed to show your credit report to new creditors.
A credit freeze will not have any effect on your current credit accounts unless you are applying for new credit. And in that case, you can notify the credit bureaus to place a temporary lift on your accounts.
Do you think there's a bigger problem here?
I think so.
Fraud victims we talked with say they're glad they found out about this now, but they still have more questions for FEMA and the SBA.
What else is out there? What else are they going to try to acquire with using my name?
I'm hoping that through your investigation we find out, you know, where this is coming from, where it started from, and how deep it goes.
Yeah, we're hoping for that too, but both FEMA and the SBA haven't given us much information other than telling fraud victims to call their hotline. But we're told it's very hard to actually get someone on the line. Now, obviously, this is concerning, but like I mentioned in my report, there are steps you can take right now to protect yourself. For a list of websites and for more information about freezing your credit, head to NBC2.com. For the NBC2 Investigators tonight, I'm Rachel Polansky.
Dozens of people hit with Hurricane Irma, then with identity theft, are growing impatient with FEMA.
1 month after the NBC2 investigators exposed this major scheme involving criminals stealing local identities to get your FEMA money, investigator Rachel Polansky is finally getting answers from FEMA.
FEMA says it's been investigating these claims of identity theft since we broke the story last month. But they say they couldn't tell me that earlier because they wanted to protect the integrity of the investigation. Well, hurricane fraud victims tell me they're tired of waiting.
You have reached the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
This sound?
I got so upset, calling so many times, kept me on call for hours.
Has become all too familiar for Anderson Zumbana.
And you didn't have insurance, right?
No insurance.
Who lost everything during Hurricane Irma.
My only option was apply for FEMA.
But when he applied for FEMA assistance online, a pop-up window told him he already applied. And that's when he realized that someone had stolen his identity.
I was just devastated, you know. I lost everything now. I have nowhere to go. My identity's stolen. It's like, what's next?
So he tried calling FEMA and waited on hold for hours before he finally gave up.
I have not heard back from FEMA at all.
The same thing happened to Victoria Barnisi. She didn't apply for FEMA, but she received this letter from the Small Business Administration telling her that she had.
You feel very violated and untrusting.
And after she saw our reports, she realized that she was also a victim of identity theft. So she called and emailed FEMA multiple times, and to this day, no response.
In acknowledgement, yes, we received your email. We're working on this. Some confirmation that, yes, we heard from you would be wonderful.
The NBC2 investigators had trouble getting information from FEMA too, but after some persistence, a spokesperson agreed to talk with us about these issues.
In the early days of the investigation, there wasn't a public announcement, in part to protect the integrity of the investigation, and in part because I think investigators were still trying to determine the scope and the nature of these fraudulent registrations.
Is FEMA making it public because of our reporting?
NBC2 was the first in this area to make that connection and to see that the large number of fraudulent SBA letters coming in could be a signal that there was something more going on.
So these are the letters going around. Take a close look. And if you get one, you should assume that your identity has been compromised. So here's what you need to do. Get a hold of the 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Get copies of your credit reports and think about freezing your credit.
Anyone who becomes aware that there was a registration done in their name with their information and they didn't do it should be suspicious that they're a victim of identity theft at this point.
I feel like they don't care.
The identity theft victims I talked with are glad that FEMA has finally told me there was a problem. But they say they'd like FEMA to reach out to them too.
I would love an apology from FEMA. I think that would, yes, absolutely.
It's been too long. Let's hope with FEMA.
Now, if you've received one of the SBA letters, we've been telling you to call the FEMA Disaster Fraud Hotline. But viewers have been telling me that they've had trouble actually getting someone on that line. So I have a few other numbers and email addresses for you. They're all listed on our website. That's NBC2.com. For the NBC2 Investigators tonight, I'm Rachel Polansky.
100 days after Hurricane Irma, many are still waiting for answers from the federal government.
The NBC2 investigators exposed a scheme involving cyber criminals stealing identities to defraud FEMA. And tonight, a promise to help some victims has not been fulfilled. Investigator Rachel Polansky is in our newsroom with new information in her 3-month-long investigation.
Yeah, a spokeswoman tells me that the agency is now instituting additional verification controls to make sure that only eligible applicants are getting assistance. She also tells me that the agency is notifying identity theft victims by phone or letter. But some of the victims I talked with say they haven't heard a word.
I was concerned.
Paul and Linda Mazurkowitz can't believe what happened after Hurricane Irma.
I'm not satisfied, obviously.
They got this letter telling them that Linda had applied for disaster assistance through FEMA.
We did not have any damage. We were fortunate enough.
Well, they can't believe it because it never happened. Someone else applied using Linda's name, address, date of birth, and social security number, and they only learned about it by watching NBC2.
After I saw your news report, we really got worried because it's identity theft is such a scary, scary thing.
Just minutes after our initial report aired, emails started pouring in from viewers who received the exact same letter. And a few weeks later, a FEMA spokesperson agreed to talk with us.
In the early days of the investigation, there wasn't a public announcement, in part to protect the integrity of the investigation.
Finally confirming to NBC2 that the agency was investigating these fraudulent applications.
NBC2 was the first in this area to make that connection and to see that the large number of fraudulent SBA letters coming in could be a signal that there was something more going on.
Since then, NBC2 has repeatedly asked FEMA for updates on this investigation, but the agency has only said that they are working with federal partners to investigate.
Seriously? That's a poor response.
Meanwhile, Victoria Barnisi is the only identity theft victim we talked with that has heard back from FEMA.
It took some time for them to get to me, but they finally did, and I was happy about that.
The others are still waiting.
I would like to know what the status is and just how badly our identity has been compromised.
For a call they can't be certain will ever come.
Now, the FEMA fraud hotline is still active. The number to call is there on your screen, 866-720-5721. And even if you already reported fraud to FEMA or the Small Business Administration, you should call again if you haven't heard back yet. And if you have any problems, I want to hear about it, so let me know. For the NBC2 Investigators tonight, I'm Rachel Polansky.